What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Flicking with Skip. I am your host and friend, Skip Marazi, here on a behind-the-scenes podcast for Cox and Space as we work on animatics for the scene one. We're still in scene one. We've been working on this one for a year. Here on Flicking with Skip, we work on this year. I try to take Jack Keynes' work and turn it into something that we can use so we can get our hero to run down the hallway. It's a simple animation. He just gets smaller, makes some sounds, looks like he's running. This cloud follows him. Just to demonstrate the potential. And that's all we're trying to do in this phase of the project is demonstrate the potential. But also on this podcast, we talk about movies, which is probably the reason you're here. I can't imagine people, except for historians, maybe tuning in for the animatic portion. But needs to be done, and we get to hang out. So, we're talking about Christopher Nolan and Christopher Nolan's films. This is actually part three, so if you haven't seen part one and two, you don't have to see them. They do kind of build. It's a ranking. It's a ranking of my favorite films, least favorite to greatest. And in the first one, we talked about why I think, even though he has some really good films down in the low ranking, why I think that they are so low. And tonight we're talking about the highest ranking, and why I think it really epitomizes Christopher's work and makes for great films. Again, this is all in my opinion. You're welcome to disagree below. I encourage you to. Please do that. Respectfully, if you like to be talked to respectfully. If you're not and you get sassed because of it, I'm not sure who you have to blame in that situation. Although I will try to be as nice as possible as people have asked me to do. So anyway, that veiled threat. Let's start out with the Christopher Nolan review, shall we? So I realized that basically in this episode because your host and friend is not a very smart man. Um, but basically, I came to realize that these aren't just reviews; these are also summaries of the movies. So because I don't assume that you've seen the movies, and I don't assume that you're intending to either. You may have come to this video, as I do for most things, to learn about things that I don't really have time to go do the things. So if you could just give me a quick breakdown real quick. So this series is for that. You're gonna get all the Oppenheimer the points of view on that. If you trust my point of view, if you see it in the movies, you're like, okay, cool. This guy and I agree. Um, then do it. Let's let's listen to some other reviews that you might we might also agree on. Um, so here's the lowest rank of the highest tier, in my opinion, of Christopher Nolan. Now, I put it in this category before I even saw the movie. Based solely off its reputation, which isn't entirely fair. But who I saw was in the movie. I knew it was Christopher Nolan. I knew the subject it was. And then I had seen, when the movie was coming out, I had gotten to see, of course, footage from the trailers and whatnot. So I kind of had an idea, going into Oppenheimer, which is the movie I'm talking about, um, before I got to see it, that it was going to be good. A lot of people coming out of the movie too also said that the soundtrack was amazing, which I expect no less from a Christopher Nolan movie. I think it's actually one of the reasons you'll see that I rank some of the movies higher in this in the second rank in the middle there. Um, and then in this one, not a letdown in that. Fantastic performances from everybody involved. fantastic cinematography, a great use of tension to tell a story. A great cast just all around. There's just there's celebrities just everywhere in this cast because Nolan, once he had the ability to start casting like top tier celebrities, you see it that he does. Like his very second movie, as soon as he can get people involved on the project, Guy Pearce, like Carrie Ann Moss, which we will talk about in this one. I'm very, very excited to talk about. Um, I shared in the first episode that Nolan really got me into film, at least like really loving it as an art form. And it's because I got introduced to Memento. And so it holds a soft space in my heart. And then also I got to rewatch it again. Um, and uh, you know what? It holds up. It holds up. It's a fantastic film. I think that it belongs right at the top of the list. But I went into Oppenheimer. I've loved Christopher Nolan since then, even though we've had some ups and downs. And you've heard me talk about the Batmans already. The Batmans are, uh, you know, you have to take them as what they are. Um, but beyond that, the like we've also discussed how Nolan seems to like to do. He'll do like a very commercially successful movie, then he'll do like an artistic sort of movie. Um, and Oppenheimer, it comes between. So what we have is Interstellar, and we're gonna take Quay off the list. But Interstellar, which is an artsy film in 2014, Dunkirk, which is definitely going to be planned to be a commercial success because it's dealing with the um, patriotism of Britain. Tenet, which is an artsy film, which we talked about last week, and so it's exploring this idea, and we see, of course, um, Christopher Nolan playing with time and space as he loves to, and then this movie Oppenheimer. He knows it's going to be a great commercial success because it's about the atomic bomb, it's about World War II, and he knows that he can make it successful. Um, so that because he can make it interesting. It's based off a biography, actually, and it's a really cool. Um, and this is why it'll make sense if you've seen the movie. It opens up with this quote, but it's a quote about Prometheus. And it's based on the biography American Prometheus: The Triumph and Tragedy of J. Robert Oppenheimer by Kai Bird and Martin J. Sherwin. And so it's cool that Nolan's gotten to a place in his career that he's doing biopics. He's definitely like, he is in a lot of ways the modern day Spielberg. Although I know Spielberg's still alive, and absolutely no disrespect to Steven, because he is an American icon and classic. Um, he is, he did all his work coming up to prove that he was capable of all the work he did later. He continues to this day to be a commercial success. So yeah, absolutely no disrespect. I sort of mean in the way that, well, I guess so. Christopher Nolan and Steven Spielberg are in the same ballpark, and Nolan just keeps proving that. So now he's doing this biopic. And it's an interesting one. Of course, I think we knew that he was obsessed with atomic energy. I think we saw that in Inception, and we see this idea of this in Tenet. Um, and so, like this big energy idea. Um, and so, Tim tackling Oppenheimer makes a lot of sense. This movie is 3 hours, and it's some like biography, like you to see some live action, which is really cool. And then you see a hearing that's going on to see if Oppenheimer is going to have his security clearance revoked or not. And then at the same time, you're in black and white, you're seeing Robert Downey Jr. play this character called Strauss, who's trying to get into the Senate, I believe. And they're testing his ethics at this for the Senate hearing. Um, so and it comes up that he, how he treated Oppenheimer so badly. And as it unravels, spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. As it unravels, he did it intentionally. So this is the reason why I put this at the very top of the list. Even though it's ranked as the bottom, it's the one that I like the least out of the ones at the top, is because Oppenheimer takes something that could be a very not interesting story and could just be full of political intrigue, but because of the way that Christopher Nolan does what he does, where he plays with time and space. And we'll get into Memento. I like really the whole time I was watching Memento, I was like, ooh, 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 yeah. See, this is the thing. This is what I love, and this is what he's like. The things that I love about his movies is when he's doing this. I pulled you out some clips. I hope you're excited. I've got some clips for you because I was excited to show you some of my favorite moments from Memento. But the thing is with Oppenheimer that he's doing the same thing. He's doing where it's the way that memory works, right? It's the way that Nolan, at his best, in my opinion, tells a story. Is that you think of an idea, and then the whole scene kind of unfolds for you, and then you see all the critical events in that scene, and then that's like held in your mind for a second, and then it's a thread like connects to this other event, right? And that holds these two things together. And so Nolan is actually writing a very like cerebral thought process with his scripts, and that's why he can do movies like Inception. I think because he's thinking that way often. That's why Memento is very important. Like how we perceive the world and how we perceive time and space is very important to him. And he doesn't tackle those themes in this movie, but the way that he handles the story itself is very it's along those lines where time is more of an abstract. It has a very like interstellar um, like engine to it, I guess, like narrative structure. Is kind of what I'm getting at, while the story itself isn't about that. And I think that it's very important to the story of Oppenheimer because, and to, this, his security hearing and then Strauss getting his just desserts. Because if we saw those three stories separately, like chronologically, it would be like so many yawns. Like it would start out cool, they would explode with a bomb, and they would see the end of his life. And we're like, oh man, this is terrible. And then we have to wait for the conclusion, where we kind of get it all together. The bomb goes off, he gets stripped of his clearance, and Strauss gets taken out as the just desserts. He brings it all together to have this like conclusion of these three stories at the same time, and that's master craftsmanship from Nolan. So this movie is 3 hours long. I'm gonna try to sum it up in less than 3 hours, so that you can get it. So strap in. Um, I kind of want to point out the most fun things that I can, um, because there's a lot of cool things about this movie that make it interesting, even though the subject matter feels like it probably won't be. This movie probably isn't very interesting to most people. There's a lot going on in it. I think it suffers the same problem that Dunkirk has, because there's just so many characters all over the place. Now, because I was going through it and I kind of like made up nicknames for everybody, it kind of helped me keep track of like what was going on. And to who, and I kind of liked these people and this concept more, so it was a little bit easier to hang on to. But yeah, to a casual viewer, there's definitely a lot going on in this movie, and it jumps around in time and space, and just it kind of like expects you to keep up. And I do have a lot of respect for Nolan in that way. I think I've mentioned it before a bunch of times, probably. Um, Dang, which is let me do it up here. That he will tell you the story, and it does make sense, and he is making sure that he's clear, but he doesn't. he doesn't spoon feed you the subject. Um, Although, again, I think it's really clear. It's just that, there's a lot. There is a lot going on in this movie. So, um, it starts with a quote. Prometheus steals the fire from the gods and then is tortured for all eternity. And then I guess this is the idea in the biography too, is that and this is kind of the thing that Oppenheimer wrestles with in this movie is like how he fundamentally changed the world. Um, because one of the things it points out, which I mean, I kind of lived through this in part, but one of the things I hadn't noticed, being that I was alive at the time, was that not the first part. World War II ends, and then it starts the Cold War after that. But like that's the era that we're still in currently. And so this standoff between the two um, is between the two countries that were allies is like where this race for the bomb gets pushed from, right? Like they want to stop the mustache man, and they feel like this is the only way they can do it. And then they also feel that because they have because it's a possibility that somebody else could build it who is unscrupulous, the mustache man could have it, that they should have it first. And even though they trust their friends, the Russians, to, who are helping them in this situation, stop the mustache man, it's like, um, it just it doesn't matter. They need to have it. So, right, so interesting. Just how could the selected area be empty? And he's aware that he is the one who did it. Um, he it's interesting. He embraced the legacy. Is first is dictated after it's used as an atomic weapon. Um, one of the things that is really cool about this is that I just realized as I'm sharing this movie with you is that it glorifies the science of the bomb, like the exploration, the concepts, the idea, the patriotism that went along with it, the reasons the humans did what they did, right? But like it doesn't actually show us what the bomb was used for. Like it happens way, way, way off screen. And actually only happens kind of in passing. They're like, oh yeah, this occurred. And also, he mentions it again when he's like he goes to the president, played by I wish I could Gary Oldman. There it is, Gary Oldman. Uh, he goes to the president to tell him that he's like, hey, this is something that I'm super concerned about, um, and is basically like laughed out of the office. Uh, so, according to the story, Oppenheimer like he come on, there we go. He like embraces his identity and becomes the father bond to like point out the fact that um, he made it, and so he took responsibility for the fact that it could be used, right, in just such bad ways, and that that people. I mean, while we have it, we shouldn't use it. We certainly shouldn't use it on people, because of how horrific the results of using nuclear weapons on human beings. He kind of, in some ways, Nolan shows how Oppenheimer is haunted by the explosion, and like what he knows that it does. Because so like also, yeah, it's just like it's a really terrible thing to do to people. Um, So, and like it was a good time to have used the propaganda of fear to get people to create that for them. But now that we have it, you can't let the genie back out of the bottle. So it was cool to see that Oppenheimer mentioned that, um, or at least he seems to have recognized that that what he did fundamentally change the world. Um, while we're going through this, I'm realizing that there's a lot that to like recap this movie. And you know what? It's basically it's just like history. There's no this story has the same story arc as like a basketball movie or whatever. It's the rising star who is misunderstood and probably not the best fit for the job in a lot of ways, because of his socialist background, and people he's related to. But he's picked anyway, so he's kind of like the underdog. Uh, the underdog doggedness is used against him quite a bit. Um, so he doesn't always get a fair shake. But he makes it. He does the thing. He wins the prize, and then after he wins the prize, he's disgraced, and he's put on. He's publicly disgraced. But the person. It turns out the person who disgraced him, even though he couldn't understand at the time who it was and why they were doing it, they get theirs because Oppenheimer is just that good of a dude in the end, who did the best he could. I guess is the conclusion of that. Um, and that's why. So, it took me forever to realize where I recognized Cillian Murphy's Oppenheimer voice from. I took me forever. You guys might not agree with this, but comment below what your thoughts are. Um, Cillian, and I don't know if it's intentionally or unintentionally, because there's no reason specifically that I would think that he would be doing this intentionally. Like if it's this is the case, I just don't get the homage. Um, he's smart, and he's smarter than me, likely, or making a joke that is his own, perhaps. I don't know. Um, but yeah, so I think that Cillian Murphy for this entire movie of Oppenheimer, the character voice that he's using is Robin Williams' voice. Now, I'm not talking wacky Robin Williams. I'm talking like Robin Williams from Inception. I'm sorry, Robin Williams from Insomnia. That era Robin Williams. If you guys want to check out my rant about that, you can. It's in that video. Um, that there's yeah that he's yeah I think that I don't know if this is true, but I think that whatever Nolan found in Robin Williams, he has kind of given over to Cillian Murphy to portray. And I don't know if that, I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, but it was bothering me the whole movie. Well, it was bothering me for most of the movie until like it finally dawned on me that that's what it was, like what the sound is. So anyway, thoughts below. I don't know. I don't know if that was like, oh, people will be like, oh yeah, of course, like he's doing that because I would love to know that. I do not know why. Matt Damon shows up in this movie with a moustache, which is just a I don't know. It looks so weird on his face. He doesn't seem, you know, like the Jason Bourne era. The young kid, fresh faced kid. That's who Matt Damon in my brain is. The mustache is really something else. Um, the getting the people together, the fun times they had together, and the building of New Mexico and bringing the physics together for Oppenheimer in New Mexico was really, really fun. Um, the idea that they did it even though they could light the atmosphere on fire is just I mean, does nothing but spell the fear of the time that they're in. You know, like it's just crazy to me that they're just like, oh my God, above all else. You know what I mean? Like we have to have this thing that maybe it will destroy us. And then the idea too, of course, that uh, maybe it maybe it has like maybe it's made us do things that we don't like. So I think that's the thing that the point of this movie was trying to get is that the world is fundamentally changed. And in so many ways, we did light the atmosphere on fire, even if it wasn't physically that happened. This movie actually ends with that idea. So it's him like in a rocket ship or a plane, like above the atmosphere. Perhaps that's what it is, because he's envisioning himself as one of the bombers, and the atmosphere below him ignites, and the whole planet is engulfed. Um, it's as far as like the cliffhanger moments that Nolan likes to have at the end of his movies. This it's not a cliffhanger, and it's pretty powerful. It's a nice closing image. It really for this final shot alone, he should be at the this is one of his best films. There's a bunch of other things as well. He has Einstein in this movie, and Einstein says he when he made his breakthrough, I think it was something 40 years before, he had to deal with the repercussions of what he did. Um, and when all the dust settles and whatnot, everyone will come and want to congratulate you, he says, but uh, it won't be for you. It'll be for them. That they're congratulating you. Isn't that interesting, right? Um, so Nolan is a fantastic storyteller. This isn't revealed until the very end. This is what's been said between the two of them. It becomes like a kind of like what you call a contention, contentious kind of mystery uh, with Strauss because he thinks that Oppenheimer soured Einstein, and someone says to him, "No, you're overthinking it. It's they were probably weren't even talking about you. It's probably just their own private conversation. You know how those physicists are; they're always caught up in thoughts." Um, but Strauss saw this. I think Oppenheimer didn't take his appointment. He took it personally, um, and so he went after him for that. Um, when they're voting in, the one person who stops the vote apparently is JFK, the John F. Kennedy, who, guys, this is almost done. We gotta have to figure out what to do with these lines, but because he's space here, like, look how complicated this is to like try to pull out and mask. We'll see. I'll figure out what to do with it. It's also got the glass texture on it. It's definitely not easy. Like each one of these sections is super unique. Um, anyway, I might just take this whole window, say, and replace it down there and down there, because this won't be something that you look at for too long. It's just gonna be moving, so it might not matter so much. Anyway, there are parts in Oppenheimer that aren't very interesting. The only thing that would does make it interesting is the soundtrack. Um, so it does have that going for it. It does keep the tension pretty high for some of these hearing meetings. And like this, basically a movie of political maneuvering. Um, so But there's a lot of, I mean, there's a lot of great actors in this movie. Rami Malek shows up for a bit. Polka Dot Man from the Suicide Squad shows up. The kid from, was on the tip of my tongue. That one horror movie where there's it's like a found footage in part, uh, and they're recording the anyway. It's got a Blair Witch Project, feeling to it. And then these kids go down where a meteor has crashed down, and they gain superpowers because of it because they start to bend stuff. And then this kid's been abused, and so he becomes like a villain. Um, uh, I'll pull it up in the edit so you guys can know what movie I'm talking about. If you guys figured it out before it popped up on the screen, congratulations. Comment below to let me know. You guys are like, hey, I want to know. Um, so let's see. Who else? Of course, Emily Blunt um, is in it. She's with Cillian Murphy, Florence Pugh, uh, Robert Downey Jr., Matthew Modine, um, you know, all of Nolan's usual cast of characters. I was surprised to see that Joseph Gordon-Levitt wasn't in the movie, but the role that definitely seemed like it was going to be Joseph Gordon-Levitt turned out to be Casey Affleck instead. Fun surprise. Interesting when he shows up, right? All of a sudden you'd be like, "Is that Casey Affleck? Holy crap! I didn't. That's weird. He always shows up at the weirdest times, you know." Um, he's like some guy taking the lie down um, from Oppenheimer. Um, weird side quest in the story for sure. Um, Again, a lot of social intrigue. You find out it's believed that um, Florence Pugh, who is, she's like the longtime fling, Oppenheimer's longtime fling, with his wife or whatever, the mistress on the side, the longtime mistress on the side, because they've known each other for so long, um, who never really wants him, but won't stop his advances or something. I don't know how it works out. It seems like she's down for it, but um, it's not clear why. Um, but anyway, so she turns out that she may have been a spy, or she killed herself. It's not really clear. Um, and that he may have been leaking secrets to her, so he might be the leak that was in his project. But there's all that. Okay. Um, yeah. Uh, I think that the yeah, it's this movie could only was only fun because Nolan did it. I will give you that. And then that being said, he did a really fantastic job putting it together. Like visually, um, because it could be so drab, and it could be so uninteresting. It gets like major points for really being like intriguing. He makes it the same as like the following, for instance, that we're going to talk about later. Like it's just like so the following is just a confession. The whole movie is just a confession, and so that's basically what we're seeing. Um, but this is the same thing. This is just a bunch of hearings, which are just confessions, right? And so he turns into such a nice thing to watch. I guess that's the best I can say for it. Um, I can't imagine reading the book because I mean, hopefully the book made it as interesting as Nolan made it. I can't speak for that. People comment below if you're like, oh yeah, no, it was totally worth it. That is a thing. Um, but yeah, yeah, that's that's gonna be my review and go over of Oppenheimer. I'm sure there's a bunch of people who are going to be mad about this, but There's not a whole lot to say, in my opinion, about that movie. I think it's a good biopic. It holds up and does what it's supposed to, right? It shows the ups and the downs of the character. I think it really humanizes him too. Like I really feel for Oppenheimer, like Cillian Murphy's portrayal of him as a character really makes me like, okay, cool. I feel good about, knowing who this guy is and that he was human. He made a bunch of mistakes. There's points where he's just admitting to he like straight up lied. There's a one point in the movie where he's giving this speech right after they've dropped the bombs, and he's trying be positive because the whole room is cheering, but at the same time, the way that it's being filmed is that he's just like he cannot. He's in this his own place and far away, and just like trying to deal with the craziness of what he's done. And so, yeah, I think the way that Nolan did that, and again, the nonlinear storytelling, really helps this story. So, yeah, that's why it's in the top tier. That's why I think it's a great Nolan feature. You do have to know what you sign up for with this movie. So just take that as you will. Um, Steal this background. Just do a quick cheek. Yeah, so fun and check that out. Um, there's just so much more that I want to say about the other ones, and so we're gonna be rolling on. Um, the next movie that is, I think, the highest tier that you can get with a Nolan film, absolutely worth checking out. He ticks every single one of the boxes. One is a period piece. Two, it's about battling magicians. It's The Prestige. It's 2006. I forgot to mention on the previous movie with Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer is a very highly rated film. That's why I know that. I made a bunch of people that I didn't review it for much longer. I think a lot of people have talked about that movie. It's at 8.3. Um, this one, the Prestige that came out in 2006 is an 8.5. It's based on a novel by Christopher Priest, and this is actually one of the things I will say about Nolan is he does a lot better with his movies as far as the story goes when he's not the one responsible for the story. And I will continue to say that in a lot of different ways. Uh, but like Batman's an exception just because I think there's a lot of people who have their hands on that IP and there's a whole committee that writes that, and I don't say that art can't be made by committee, but it depends on the committee is what I would definitely say for sure. Um, so uh, that being said, the story is set up really nicely in The Prestige. Um, it has two directly opposing forces. This Christian Bale is one of the magicians. Hugh Jackman is another one of the magicians. It has a fantastic supporting cast. Scarlett Johansson, um, the Andy Serkis, David Bowie, Michael Caine. Um, there's one actress, I'll pop her up on the screen, and she's in a large portion of the movie, and she's fantastic at doing her role, which is, being a sad lady who is torn between two people. Um, and it really does. I mean, this movie, it's just, it's, it's magical. So. This movie is not The Illusionist, is one thing I want to point out. The Illusionist came out with Edward Norton, and damn, if I can remember his name, I thought of it before. He is a really good actor, and so is Edward Norton, and it's a shame. I think Jessica Biel is also in this movie. Um, But yeah, it's just a shame that these movies came out at the same time. It feels to me as if they are actually like dueling films. There's a thing called twin films, and that's what these are officially lumped into. But it feels this is more like a Bugs Ant situation. I have nothing to back that up except for the content of the films. They just feel very, very the same. And what I say is it's a shame is because you can't stand up to the Prestige. Um, so that movie, the other movie is about this like magic as magic, and basically it comes down to like a lot of CG work, which is just like, you can see it and it is magical, but like, it's a film, right? Like you're not in the audience watching this like magic thing occur. So it's not like it has the same like, oh, ah. And I think the filmmakers forgot that for the illusionist versus the prestige. The prestige is very interesting because it's all about intrigue in the same way that Oppenheimer is, the same way the following is, the same way Memento is. As you see, I really like when Nolan does intrigue um, because he does it so freaking well. Um, and so you'll see that here we have that. Man, how does this even start? So there's these two magicians who are working for Christian Bale and Hugh Jackman are working for this other musician and talk about how they can do great tricks and how great tricks are made. Um, oh yeah, that's right. I have to take these things out too. And so, they want to come up with this great trick and they go back and forth. But before we get into that, let me just point out the opening shot. Because the opening shot is something that you are not soon to forget. And nor should you soon forget. It opens with basically a million top hats. And it has the line from Michael Caine where he says, um, are you watching closely? And with that, the movie takes off. This is where it begins, and it's what I love about the Prestige over the Illusionist specifically, because this movie is about magic in a very very technical fashion. And when you look closely at it, I think what you'll find is that Christopher Nolan is actually talking about movies and how there's this thing to films themselves, and we might dive deeper into that. I might have to do a full like analysis video on that if you want to hear it. But like because it's about the performance, right? And how far a person will go to get the perfect performance. And basically, what they both figure out is that in order to have the most perfect performance, and they learned this from this old Chinese guy who is only able to do this one trick because people can't believe that he, as a crippled old Chinese guy, is capable of doing the trick. Um, and so they watch him and they realize that he's probably not crippled at all. He's just pretending to be crippled, and that's the whole illusion of his trick. And so they decided they have to dedicate their lives to it. And so they have this like this back and forth. Um, and one of the big things that happens is that Christian Bale discovers this trick, which is this. It's called the transported man. And basically, he shows up in one place. He goes into one door, which is a closet, and then he comes out another door. Um, and it's within a fraction of a second, and no one can understand how he's doing it. Of course, Hugh Jackman wants to get his hands on the trick. He must have it because he can't be bested by this guy. They've had this ongoing rivalry. Um, Michael Caine, who is the guy who engineers tricks, is telling him he's got to have a double, and there's got to be someone that he has. That's the case. And we know for sure that Christian Bale has this one guy hanging around called Fallon. But it's just so wild because along the line, as they're coming up in the world and doing their separate tricks, Bale. Yeah, okay, so early on, there's this knot that they're not supposed to do. That so in early on, as they're working with becoming magicians themselves, they're part of this show where the guy is he dunks a woman into a tank and she escapes and she comes out. Um, and so it's not really him doing the magic trick. It's actually her. And way to go, his assistant, for doing the magic for him. But two plans to the audience tie the knots to make sure that she can escape. One of them is Hugh Jackman, one of them is Christian Bale. So Christian Bale says that there's some other knot that's like easier to slip out or something like that. Michael Caine said it's not suggested because it's not a water knot. It could lock up instead and leave her drowned in there. And so apparently, he does the knot. He does one of the knots. Um, and so Hugh Jackman's wife gets killed in a tank on stage, and so it's like this huge ordeal, right? And so it becomes this driving force for Jackman. This is why he can't let Bale win as a magician because that's the man who killed his wife. And he just won't let it go, even though he has like a beautiful young assistant, Scarlett Johansson at one point. Like he just can't let go of the fact that Bale killed his wife. I really want these marks here, but those are gonna be super hard to pull out because they're so thin. Um, I have to figure out something to get those guys. So right. So they go back and forth, and Christian Bale is doing this bullet catching trick, which Michael Caine has pointed out is very dangerous because, if somebody wants to mess with the magician, the person who all have to do is put like something in the tip of the barrel of the gun, even though there's no bullet in there anymore, and make a projectile basically, right? Oh, and so Jackman it slips into the crowd. He gets a hold of the gun for Bale's act, and then he shoots him, right? Blowing off a couple of fingers. So now the problem in the Transporter Man is because in the Transporter Man there's another duplicate there, but it's got to be a person who's exactly the same, who has the exact same missing digits, right? And so that's the way that it proves the trick's genuine. Scarlett Johansson points out. There's also this whole thing that goes back and forth where somebody gets a diary from somebody else and they start reading it, and then in the diary somebody starts reading somebody else's diary. It's an interesting plot device. It's probably from because it's a novel that's happening. What it's like a weird. You could tell that it's from a novel. You know what I mean? Like it's a weird storytelling device for visuals. Um, Now, one thing in the very beginning of the movie, which is very famous, a lot of people know of this, even if they haven't seen The Prestige, but Michael Caine introduces the idea of what The Prestige is that he says that magic has these three parts. He says that there's this pledge where you take something ordinary, then there's the turn where you take the ordinary thing and you do something extraordinary with it. And then there's the prestige, and the reason that people applaud is you bring that thing back. Um, so, right, cool, cool, fun times. And so the prestige is where you bring it back. So there's this duplicate that Bale has. At one point, uh, Bale is found. He's after this long time away. We see again this nonlinear storytelling, which is just fantastic for Christopher Nolan. Just the way that he tells this in The Prestige is that after a long time away, Hugh Jackman's character has gone to Colorado. He's met with David Bowie, who is playing Tesla, and Tesla has given him a way to do a trick that is the transporter man, but better. And so Bale slips into the on stage as one of the people who's looking at the apparatus to check it out or whatever, um, and in disguise, of course. And he slips backstage and he finds that Jackman falls into a tank of water and is trapped there and drowns. And that's he. So Bale's there, and Michael Caine is testified that that's wasn't where that prop was supposed to be. That there's supposed to be a prop lock on there, and that Christian Bale probably did something to him intentionally. And so Bale gets put in jail, um, and his little girl, which even though there's all this tragedy that's been going on around him, his little girl is taken away. Um, and then you kind of get to explore through that him being in jail, like how he kind of has like this split personality, where sometimes he loves his wife and sometimes he just wants to party, and sometimes he loves his girlfriend and sometimes he's like more dedicated to his wife than, and he feels guilty. And so there's just like the struggle between the two parts of him. And then also, of course, we have the exploration of Jackman in Colorado and meeting with David Bowie. Tesla has some really cool lines in that he says things like, "I can see an obsession," and an obsession is something that you should give up. It's something that if you don't stop, it will consume you. And Jackman's like, "No, I'm gonna do this anyway." So here's the unraveling, because we have to get to it eventually, right? And this is what, to me, is what makes The Prestige hands down just a fantastic story. You're not going to find better anywhere else, and then also an amazing Christopher Nolan film is this story in the way that it's executed. Obviously, okay, we have to give the story to Christopher Priest, who's the one who wrote the novel. So that unraveling does have to go to him, but it's also in the way that he tells the story visually. So for Nolan, the way he executes in the script, hands down to both of them. I don't know why I'm trying to hold up one over the other. Hands down, like give it up to both of them for executing this. But what it comes down to is that Bale did in fact create a duplicate of himself. And when he got one of his fingers blown off, when he had two of his fingers blown off, the other one had to have his fingers taken off also. That they've been living a double life and they've kind of been switching off between who's the real Christian Bale the entire movie. And so it's really fascinating. I mean, I also forgot to mention this is a period piece. So for all of that, this is also, so he's doing this during like a turn of the century kind of thing. So everything's in period costume. Like the streets are all dirty. There's carts everywhere. Nolan's bigness is on display, but in such a subtle way, like it's just a backdrop to all this action. Anyway, so Christian Bale did in fact create a duplicate of himself, and also here's the wild part, is that Jackman has done it as well. But what he does is he does one, because one of the things that happens throughout the movie is that Jackman is able to find a double, like a person who looks like him, and they do the transported man for a time. But the big problem that they have is that if you have a duplicate, they say it's you're going to run into a problem that they're going to find out, like, how valuable they are, and that they hold your secret. And if they hold your secret, then they hold power over you. Um, and so what he decides to do instead is he does a limited run where he creates a duplicate of himself and he drops one into a tank. And he kills them over and over and over again. And he does this because he knows that Christian Bale won't be able to resist the temptation of discovering what the secret is and how he's doing it. And he's going to frame him for his murder and take his kid away. And then he lets him know that's what he's doing. Um, Now, he never found out. Jackman doesn't find out to the very end about Bale's duplicate. And so even though we watch one of the Christian Bales get killed, the other one comes for revenge. And that's when we find all these Jackmans in the tank. Um, and so Christian Bale at the end of the movie is brought back and reunited with his daughter. It's the one who loves him. The one who got in trouble is the one who was kind of who was the magician who didn't wasn't really the family man, who's the one who partied, and so he gets his just desserts, um, and it's just the thing that like Jackman allowed himself to drown every night, and so he was like just re-experiencing his like wife's death like over and over and over and over again like every night. Um, One of the things that Nolan does really good, and you can tell that he has experience in his life, or somehow he just has like a sense of it. I don't know, but one thing he messes with and deals with, in addition to time and what time is and how space works and stuff like that, is grief, and how you deal with grief. Um, it's in his very first movie, Memento. We'll talk about that more. It's in Interstellar. It is the heart of Inception. It's the heart of this movie. Is how you deal with grieving. And Jackman's character decides the way that he's going to deal with grieving is he makes himself die like she died, um, every night, for a run until Christian Bale takes the bait, and then that night he doesn't reappear. Um, so right, it's just wow. Nolan is really good, right? At the heart of the movie, like on the surface of the movie, what you see is two magicians battling over who's the greatest magician and who has the greatest trick. Um, and then at the heart of the movie, you find it's about how how we deal with loss, and how even like we can get so obsessed with like being the best that we can forget the more important things, right? Like taking care of our family and being in love and all those sorts of things. It's just Nolan's good, right? Like it's the levels of a film. It's the levels so that makes it that it's not just you've seen the story one time, but the story is very rich with lots of character experiences. So the more you have experiences yourself, the more you can begin to relate to a film. I think that's what makes really good stories, is that. And so I think that Nolan's doing a really good job with The Prestige. If you haven't checked out the Prestige, um, I, uh, I highly highly recommend it. No reservations. Absolutely no reservations about that film. I love it a lot. Everything about it. It's well worth your time as a viewer. Um, There is a really cool shot. We come back around when we find out that Jackman, how he's going to be doing the trick is replicating himself. We deal with later how he gets rid of the bodies. But he thinks the trick hasn't worked. They keep zapping his hat and zapping his hat. They zap this black cat, and they think it didn't work. But then he goes outside, and there's a black cat, and there's a whole hill of black top hats. The shot we saw in the beginning. Um, and the shot itself is it's this very simple uh, and elegant. There's no dialogue. There's just a little music, and it's just this panning shot of all these hats. And you've known that the goal was to try to make the hat move, right? And there you have it. It has done it so many times they just didn't know. Like when you press the copier button a bunch of different times, and then you come back later and there's a big stack. It's kind of like that. I wrote in my notes that this is the reason I love Nolan is because he believes his audience is intelligent enough to understand what he's saying to them. Uh, he doesn't just spell it out, he just shows you, and after he's leading you towards this idea, and then he shows you, um, so that you feel smart because he believes you're smart. And so when you understand what Nolan says through his films, I think that there's a reward in that. I think that he sets up the reward in believing that you're smart enough to get it. And maybe that's a bar that he's setting, so that maybe not everybody does get it. I don't know. I think it's very welcoming of him to do that, to invite people to that he's like, you guys, you got this. And so, um, I don't know, maybe some of his movies have that they like spell it out, but I don't feel like that's the case. A lot of, with Nolan, I don't feel like he has to. So um, I think he makes movies that are very clear and to the point, without being while still being profound. So I don't know. I don't know what to say, what that is, but he's doing it. So um, yeah, that is that's the review and kind of overlook uh, at wow. Sorry, I was looking at the picture and I was thinking of the movie The Illusionist, and that's not the name of this movie. It still is still not the name of this movie. It's The Prestige. It also might be why, people have seen The Illusionist more, is because they can remember the name of the freaking movie. The Prestige is a difficult thing if you're not used to the idea of what it talks about. Of course, it makes sense in the context of the movie, right? Because we know it's the thing that comes back. He's become extraordinary and come back. Um, so so that's the case, but yeah, no, I'm sorry, I did totally mess that up. That's the conclusion of The Prestige. Uh, Sorry, I just saw that there's this monologue from Jackman that I wanted to make sure that we got, because it's just great writing by Nolan. Jackman, as he's been shot by Bale's double, or Bale himself, but he's alive when he thought he was dead. He says, "You never understood why we did this. The audience knows the truth. The world is simple, and it's solid all the way through. But if you can fool them for a second, then you can make them wonder, and then you can make them see something very special." And he says, "You really don't know, do you? It was the look on their faces." And see, it's interesting, right? Like the movie, he's like, the reason that they had this competition, the reason that they were at odds with each other, the reason it went as far as it did, the reason he wanted to best the other one is that he wanted to be the one that saw the wonder in people's faces, as he performed magic for them, knowing it's a trick, but still making them believe that it's not. Um, and that's why where I started the statement with this is I really think that Nolan is talking about, he's talking about film, what he does. That storytelling is really that. Um, Michael Caine ends the movie by saying, "You want to be fooled," and it is interesting for this movie the whole time. Like it's very clear. I think it's clear. Like as you watch, I've seen the movie before. As you watch through it, like nothing is really hidden. But you don't want that to be the case. You don't want him to have a double. You want it to be that there's something magical actually going on, and then it turns out there is something magical going on, but it's being done, in a very practical and understandable kind of way. Not the way you want magic at all, right? Um, so, right, beautiful. That's it's a beautiful movie. I'm going to take a quick break just to point out that this is a behind the scenes Cox and Space podcast. On this podcast, where this is Flicking with Skip, and I'm Skip, and so here we are talking about flicks. So that's what we do on this podcast. We do have other ones. We do talk about political activism and the state of the world as it is now. Uh, on Drawing with Jack as we work on the drawings. We do talk about the concepts of the mind and how we how we evolve as humans, mentally and socially, and that is on the Sesh program. And we make music over there for the show. And here we flick skip. We go over flicks with skip. So if you want to find out more about some of the other things that we do, or the project that we're working on as a whole, you can go to coxinspace.com, check it out, coxinspace.com. So there, you can go check it out. You can get on the Discord, and you can check out all the work we do, where we hang out up on the Discord. You can also got the wrong brush. You can also get on our Facebook, if you that's more to your liking, and go talk to Aaron Cosbill up on our Facebook page. Yeah, tell him about the things you find that are interesting, and let him know you'd like to be on the shows, and you can come on and be on one of the shows also. Share with us the things that you find interesting. So yeah, that's the thing you can do. That's just coxinspace.com. Also, you can go up there and get connected with our Patreon if you want to join the crew. So you just click join the crew, and you can join if you want to be a science officer, a bridge officer, or a cadet. Any one of those things will get you a part of becoming part of Constant Space as far as like an influence on the show and what happens. Have you come on more regularly, your thoughts and opinions about where it's going and what's happening. It also makes you a co-producer, which means that you get the payout with us when the show pays out. So think about it, join on board, and help us spread happiness across the universe. So coxinspace.com, and we'll get back to the reviews, Christopher Nolan's movies. So we're actually getting into like my most fun part, and it's a good thing that the following is only an hour, because I have a lot to say about Memento, because of course I do. Um, like I said, it has nostalgia for me, for one, because I've watched it a bunch of times as a teenager, but also just that it's a really, really good movie. Um, so let's go. Let's talk about the following first, because it is Christopher Nolan's first public movie. Um, I can't remember what I haven't looked up, rather, what festivals it went to and where it got released, but it has both of those things to its name. Um, so it is a movie proper. It's not just like from his VHS collection of homemade movies or whatever. Um, it's the one that I found out that he was making it like nights and weekends kind of thing, as he could with his cast. So I have respect for that, because it's like one of those things you're like, dang, you know, um, he saw a vision, he wanted it to be, and it didn't just come together. He had to make it come together, you know. And you gotta have a lot of respect for that too, right? Um, just like the same thing with, like, say, Rocky, right? Like Sylvester Stallone working on Rocky and bring that picture together. Um, it's just, it takes effort. It takes sacrifice. So, you know, it happened. They got it to happen. Um, and I'll say this too. It's a fantastic movie. I hadn't seen it in a really long time. Like, I hadn't seen it since, wow, probably 20 years ago. Um, so it's really good. I didn't see it right when it came out, but I probably saw it in like 2006 or something, 2004, 2006, something like that. Back when Netflix was still sending discs. Um, yeah, yeah, that long ago. Um, I do really like this movie. I was really hyped about getting to see it. Um, and So it is about a man who is following. And uh, so what what he says, okay, so where it starts is interesting. It starts in the end, like so many of Nolan's films. Um, but it jumps around a lot, to kind of give us this bigger picture. The thing that he is really good at, you can see that he's really good at it even in this film. And actually, just like with Memento, and just like with Oppenheimer, that if you did tell this movie sequentially, it would be real boring. Um, it doesn't. It's more fun to know things when they're necessary to know them. It has more of a feeling of a guy telling you a story at the pub, where he goes, "Oh, let me back up real quick to let you know about blah 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 such and such," right? Um, and so it starts off with this guy, he's confessing, and he starts talking about, I didn't even mean to do it. I have these rules. I just started following people. I had to get out the house, start following people. I wanted to see where they go, wanted to see what they did, etc., etc. This guy goes along where he ends up following this other guy for a while, a couple of days, because he finds him interesting, he says. Um, he finally follows him into a restaurant because sees or a cafe. He sees that he's got a bag with him, and he's curious about the bag. He doesn't do anything. In fact, he pretends not to even know the guy's talking about when the guy finally comes and sits down next to him. Uh, the guy says, "Who are you? What are you doing?" etc., etc. And that's when we get the introduction between a guy named Cobb and a guy who calls himself Bill, William, something, Billy. I don't know. It's kind of immaterial. He's the guy. He's the main character. Um, so this guy apparently Cobb has been he's a burglar, and this burglar has been burgling as burglars do, and our character thinks that the best thing that he could possibly do is go along with it, and that he should become a burglar too, because he could really use the excitement. And so he does. They burgle a place. They get caught in the middle of it, but it's this adrenaline. And Cobb begins to explain to the main character. He's like, like the reason I break into place, yeah, it's financial, but it's also what I do something very, very important. I take the thing away from them, and then they appreciate it more that they've got it back, or that they have to have it, right? Um, and so, yeah, like it's a very much like a Fight Club esque, you know, feeling to it, like that whole counterculture thing that you know the thrill of being alive, like uh, yeah, the loss of something makes it greater to to the people who have lost it. Um, the whole Raymond Kessel thing from Fight Club is what I'm talking about. The censor, but I'll cut it in so you guys can see it. That's what I'm talking about. That's the same feeling that this has. Um, you know, robbing for the thrill of it, and not because they're strung out. Anyway, so Cobb recommends that he gets new clothes so he's not recognized. That he cuts his hair, and all of a sudden he's living the high life. He starts following this girl. He meets this girl at the pub. Um, but also it's one of the places that they burgled. So don't like it. Oh, I can leave it. So he starts this relationship with her, and the guy's suddenly is looking up for him. Um, Here comes the twist, though, is that the guy Cobb is actually setting up our guy for a completely different reason. Now, the reason that the girl thinks that it is because something. Because Cobb has told her that he stumbled into a crime scene by accident and is burgling, and the cops have been after him, and now he needs like an alibi, and they just need somebody to pin it on, so he has like an alibi, at least a question of doubt, right? Um, and so our guy like takes it like real personal. He's like, "Oh my God, I can't believe this," and he's like, "I got to go tell the cops what's happened because I can't have them thinking it's me." And so he goes to the cop and confesses all the things that he's done. Now, one of the things that he has done is the girl gets him convinced that he can just break into the the boss's house, um, this club owner, and get these pictures back for her. And then when he goes and gets them, he discovers that it's not at all pictures of her. The money, it, it was some money there. The thing is though, when he breaks into that place, he's greeted by the security who doesn't appreciate him being there, and he takes a hammer to the dude's skull, just whap, right? Um, and so, and now he's got a problem because when it turns out that it was just supposed to be a setup, just supposed to be he was supposed to be caught, had those charges put on him. But it looks like the same guy. Now they have a question, they'll take the suspicion off of him. The twist, though, of course, is that the detective says there is no such case of a woman who has been bashed, and so there's no reason for sorry, there's no reason for our man to come forward at all, because there's no crime. So the crime he confessed to, it doesn't even make sense. Um, Damn it. So, but the other things that Cobb has put him up to, namely like signing a credit card over with his name on it, and the murder of the blonde woman, those are some things that are very interesting to the cop. Now, of course, the murder of the blonde woman comes as a surprise um, to our hero because last he saw her, she was alive. In fact, he left the hammer that he bashed the dude in the head with um, at her place, and that's the weapon that Cobb killed her with. In fact, there is no person named Cobb. In fact, there is no address that he's at. Cobb isn't real at all. The reason that that he got set up is the blonde had seen too much from her mob boss boyfriend, and he was just tying up loose ends. And so they needed somebody to pin it on so that it would all be a nice and neat package. Um, so the following ends with that our hero getting closed up, and the final shot is Cobb standing in a crowd of people. The crowd moves in front of the camera, and when it clears, Cobb is gone. And that's it. That's the following. I am surprised. Frankly, it got 7.4. The cinematography is great. I mean, you can tell it's a low budget film, because the locations are sparse and there's only a few actors. But for what it is, like Nolan still puts a lot on display, like big skylines, like interesting sets, um, places like that, and then also his camera angles and takes. The same way as with Insomnia, with long takes that are necessary, exciting camera angles or interesting ones from an angle. He has things that like cut through shots and stuff like that too, without being like real artsy about it. Like it tells the story it needs to, and it makes itself intriguing. Um, so anyway, yeah, to me, the following, it's a really great movie. It's so fun. The narrative being out of order is so fun, and just the whole um, I think the mystique of it, like it's like a noir. It's supposed to be a noir, and it is, and it has this like real cat and mouse game. And in that, I think that that's where like it just works so well. Is that he writes like the characters like towards each other. You know what I mean? They're not just doing events, but they have an effect on one another. Guys, for the last portion of the show, I'm actually gonna put on just some of Jack Drying. I kind of hit the wall. I realized I want to do more on this, but we're real close. We'll get this in the next one probably. So I'm just gonna save it and then pull up pull up the video. We're gonna watch some other clips too. So I'll have that, but just for right now, I thank you for being with me on this. And here's what we've done recently. Gonna do that. But yeah. So let me let's talk about my favorite movie. Uh, one of my favorite movies. We'll have to review my other favorite movies at another time. Um, One of them is Fight Club, as I've talked about a little bit recently, but more recently. Uh, in this podcast. But then also the other one is Cool Hand Luke. And those are kind of, I believe, like the trio of my favorite movies. Um, if that helps you at all. I don't know if it does. I don't know if you're asking those questions. But yeah, Memento, Cool Hand Luke, and wow, Fight Club. And those are kind of like, core. They all, I kind of watched them at a time in life where I was, developing as a person and developing an identity. And I think that these ones kind of did that for me. I don't, they definitely said something about me. And you armchair psychologists are welcome to comment below. Um, so without further ado, let's talk about Memento. Memento comes out in 2000. I'm in the middle of high school. Um, So that's awesome for everyone who's trying to work out my age. 8.4 is what it gets. It deserves that uh, because it is a really fantastic, well put together movie. You can see that this movie also has a budget. It's bigger than the following, but it's still on quite a tight budget. Locations are pretty sparse. There's some really nice set pieces and there's some really nice costumes and props. Um, but yeah, they beyond that, I am actually referring to the Jaguar as a prop. Just so you know, it's because the way that they use it. I couldn't figure out if it was a set piece or a prop, but because they kind of used it as both. But yeah, no. But you can tell like it's still a pretty small budget. But they have this is what I point out: Carrie Ann Moss, Joe Pantoliano, Guy Pearce. That there is one guy, Jimmy Graves, who's not played by anyone as recognizable. Same thing with Bert, the hotel desk guy. If you look, you'll see that he does show up in other stuff and has been showing up in stuff for a while.
Thing that's
Um,
crazy to me about Mark Boone Jr. is that this is his IMDb. Now, it's just like, you're like, I've never seen this guy. I don't know who he is. And then you look at his IMDb and you're like, but god damn, I have seen like a bunch of the stuff you've done. He is in The Equalizer. He is Shockley in Die Hard 2. He's on Law and Order for an episode. He's on Quantum Leap for an episode. He is on The Wonder Years for an episode. He's on Seinfeld for an episode. He's the bus driver of Mice and Men. You've seen him on The Adventures of Pete and Pete for an episode. He's in the movie Daybreak. He is in The Quick and the Dead, Last of the Dogmen, the movie Seven with the Seven in the middle, a David Fincher film. The Game. I love that in Seven he's the greasy FBI man, and then in the game he's the shady private investigator. So he's kind of in character cast, but good for him for getting work and continuing to. He's in Armageddon. He's in I Still Know What You Did Last Summer as a pawn shop owner. He's in The General's Daughter. Obviously, Memento that we talked about. He's on an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm. He's in the movie Too Fast, Too Furious. Uh, Fun movie Frankenfish. He's on in 2 episodes of the show Carnival, which is a favorite of mine. I might review at one point. Unfortunately, it's too soon. He's in Batman Begins as Flash. He's also the voice in the video game. Um, he's in 30 Days of Night. I'm still continuing. He's in Halloween 2, the 2009 series. I mean, look at this. Like he's just continuing to work, just doing it. He's on the Sons of Anarchy, which is probably where a lot of people may know him from. I haven't seen Sons of Anarchy, but he's Bobby Elvis. Um, you've got to appreciate it. I think his IMDb said that it's 165 credits, which means that he's been working. And you got to give it to him because you see he started in the 80s. Whole different thing. You guys may have seen him on The Mandalorian as Ranzar Malik, and you just see that he's just continued. He was on Paradise City for 8 episodes, in Hightown for 4 episodes, 163 credits, and then two coming up in the next year. So, shout out, shout out to our guy Mark
Thank you.
Jr.
Um, but yeah, since I'm a fan of this film, sorry, Stephen Tobolowsky, of course, is in this movie too, as a sneak. He is Sammy Jenkins, um, but he comes in later in the story. The movie's score starts in the very first frames, which I think is just really fantastic to have done. It's the very first frames where you're watching the reverse developing of a Polaroid. And in that reverse developing, you're looking at what as you look at it more, right? You can see it's like a mess of like gore and possibly a body laying, and as it flicks, it fades away, and you can see that it's all kind of fading back in the moment. Now it's interesting that, and I say interesting in that it's compelling because this is how Christopher Nolan is trying to let us know that the movie is going to run partially backwards. Um, is that because what you're seeing in this film, and some people who I know have had a hard time with this, and maybe if you're watching this film and you like movies, this won't be an issue for you because you've seen the way that people handle different types of storytelling, and this is not a thing. But some people have had a problem with this that the parts that are in color, every time you see it, it goes back and then leads up to the moment, and then the parts that are in black and white, those are going sequentially forward. And so I don't think anyone who's listening to this is going to find that an issue. But that's just, some people have struggled, who I know who have struggled with that. But it's a really, really cool device. And I encourage you, if you're thrown by it at first because it is so unusual, and I will give you, it is so unusual. I can't think of another movie that does this sort of thing. Is that stick it through because what happens is basically, if you watch this movie sequentially, it would be very, very boring. What happens when you watch it sequentially is that you see a man being paranoid in a hotel room, give himself a tattoo, get harassed by a cop, and then get lured out of his hotel room with the promise that he's going to meet. We got a long backstory about his condition and why how he's better than Sammy Jenkins because he has a system, and how Sammy Jenkins killed himself. And like how Sammy's wife gave Sammy the final exam and he killed her because she believed that he was faking because of the guy's thoughts, right? That's all the stuff that you get in the first part, and then he gets lured out of his room to get the drug dealer that he believes killed his wife, right? But we don't understand that at that point. We would understand that he just gets lured out, he kills the guy, and then we have this big reveal that this guy has been going around killing all these people, or at least he's been used to kill it. That that Teddy found the guy previously, and that he thought it would stick and that it didn't, and so he used him to take out drug dealing, make a little money. What's wrong with that? So that they could continue funding this, and there's so many ways he can do it, and then he goes into the story that you would think of probably the main story of Memento is that um, Natalie finds out about Leonard's condition. She kind of has sympathy on him, but then at the same time knows that uh, it knows that she can use him because he won't be able to remember. And then she's driving him to go take care of Teddy. So him shooting Teddy would be the end of the movie instead of the beginning, right? Um, and I think that we could have a feeling, like a justified feeling of like it came around, he got his just desserts. But I think the unraveling of the mystery of like, so he killed this man. Why did he kill this man? Was he justified in doing it? And then where we get to where we realize that he killed that man because he was used, and so she used him in a way to get his own justice, even though he didn't know that he needed justice. And then so she solves two problems at once. And then so at the end, he decides to close his own case by making a permanent tattoo. Uh, which I think, I mean, I really, I believe that this is the way that it has to be. Um, like I think Nolan has to like the story has to be told in this way in order to be as compelling as it is. Because the mystery we're experiencing the mystery for first of all from the same way that the main character is, but also in a way that like it just we get information as it's being revealed from like the past into the future. You know what I mean? And so not having to wait an entire movie for the payoff by putting the two of them right next to each other is very, very tasty. And so that's why I think that first of all it has to be shown this way, and then it makes it more compelling for the fact that there is a memory problem that the guy has, especially as when you get into the center of the film where you see that she's deliberately messing with it, and the fact that we don't get that she spit in his glass before he drinks it and hears the laughter makes us as oblivious as the dude and makes us appreciate it when it comes back around and we go, oh, that was dirty, right? When she's hiding the pens, oh, that was dirty. When she finds Dodd, and he takes care of Dodd, and we're like, oh, that's really cool. He took care of that problem for her. And then we find out that she kind of set him up to do that, right? Taking of the pens. And so it's I mean it's great like that's this it's a mystery that is given to us, the information is given to us as the mystery is unfolding. um a fantastic way to do the story. um and everything, even down to the writing uh, of the notes on the back of the photographs, is that we get to see how that all developed or how that unravels on the back of the photographs. Even down to the first time we finally don't believe his lies, right? Is where we're like, okay, when did that come in? Is when now Teddy's had a whole heart to heart with them about, it didn't stick. It never sticks. Um, I am so sorry, guys. I forgot to back up for those of you who haven't seen Memento as much as I have. So basically, here's the story, right? There's Guy Pearce is wandering through a desert town, running into different characters. He has a short-term memory loss problem, where he can't form any new memories. And so he is trying to solve the mystery of the murder mystery of his wife, because she was taken from him in a brutal attack, and in that same attack, he was injured in a way that made him lose his memory. Now he had dealt with this before because he was an insurance adjuster or insurance claims guy, and in that there was a man named Sammy Jenkins who had an accident, who was in a car accident, who had the same was exhibiting the same things. Um, and Sammy, it turns out, he couldn't be conditioned, which, as far as Leonard Shelby, our main character, Guy Pearce, knew, is that even if you had anterograde memory loss, where you can't form new memories, you should be able to condition yourself to learn things. And so he tells his wife, and they deny the claim that Sammy's actually having a mental problem. And so Sammy does this thing. So and he doesn't believe him. He doesn't believe Sammy because he says that there's this look in his face, and this is what convinces him that he's faking. Um, and so the thing with Sammy is that it's really interesting. Is his wife, believes that Sammy, according to the insurance salesman, insurance adjuster, Guy Pearce, is that Sammy loves her and that he would never do anything to harm her. And she has this insulin, and so Sammy, she gives Sammy what Guy Pearce calls her his final exam, and he makes her give insulin shot until she overdoses on insulin. Um, and Sammy can't understand why. Um, so there's all of that, right? And so Guy Pearce's character like likens himself to that. He says he understands his condition now, and so he's going off these clues. He's tattooed on his body. He has this case file. He's traveling around with this guy, and he's trying to put together, who it was. Um, and I think I've kind of unraveled it, right? He gets him. He did kill his. We find out that he did kill the guy. It turned out to be nobody whatsoever. He does have short-term memory loss. He doesn't remember it at all. And so Teddy, who is this John Gamble, who's an officer, decides to kind of use him as like a vigilante, right? Like to take out like low-level drug dealers and stuff like that. But also, Teddy decided to rob this guy. This would leads to further complications with the muscles behind that money. Anyway, so there's so many things in this movie. Just unraveling the film itself is really really fun, and just getting to watch the story come out. Um, but there's a big question that people have had back and forth, in my opinion, about whether or not Teddy is lying, whether or not Teddy that they did actually find a John G before, that you know this situation with so sorry the situation with Jimmy himself, because obviously he's set up there, he's unreliable in that way. There's a couple of other times that we find out that he's unreliable, like we find out that Teddy will lie and gaslight Leonard if he can get away with it. We see something really interesting here, and here's the other big question, is whether or not Leonard's condition is fake or not. Um, and what we see from the film is that he does, in fact, have short-term memory loss. We do see that it's pretty inconsistent. Like the time frame that it works is not the same. Like it could be 5 minutes sometimes. Sometimes he's driving along, not having any trouble. He gets to a place still remembering a thing. We actually see him at the end of the movie pretend to have memory loss in order to lure Teddy into a situation. Um, because he believes that he does in fact have that memory loss, that he doesn't know who he is or where he is. But we also know that Teddy believes it. He's seen it consistently enough. He's tested it in a bunch of different ways, and so as far as he can tell, that he does actually have it. But There's something very fascinating about this film that is definitely not on the surface, and that I don't think you notice unless you watch it like a million times. And that's what the tea I'm excited to spill here, because I've never heard anyone else talk about this. And maybe this is super obvious, and people are gonna be like, "Yeah, of course, that's the thing." I believe that this movie has the same plot as Inception, in a different way. I believe that Leonard Shelby has inceptioned himself to believe that he has interior grade memory loss, and I have proof. There's there's a couple of different moments that do occur. But one of the things is this: he has a device set up, the Remember Sammy Jenkins device. Believe that the reason he tells everybody about Sammy Jenkins is because he uses that tattoo in his own life as a personal reset. Like when he notices the tattoo, Remember Sammy Jenkins, I think he has trained himself to make his memories fade. I think in the way that he is claiming that Sammy Jenkins should have been conditioned to be able to not have memory loss problems anymore, he conditioned himself to have it. Now, here's the other side is that maybe he didn't condition himself to have it, but he conditioned himself with it to believe a specific set of truths and so that it becomes convenient to him. And here's the specific truth is that, and this is what Teddy says, his wife survived the accident, that she survived the assault, and he can't deal with the fact that he couldn't protect her, and because of that, he wrote her off in his mind basically, and Teddy points out that uh, Sammy was a faker, Sammy was a con man, Sammy didn't have a wife, but and so it's actually Leonard's wife that has diabetes. So if anybody killed Leonard's wife, it was Leonard Shelby himself. Couple of things I want to do because you might be like, that is crazy. There's no possible way, but check this out. I'm gonna zoom out real quick to this right here. This is one of the final shots in the movie. I didn't get the whole shot because I don't think it's super important because I wanted to see this in particular. But you can see the timestamp here is 1:49:51 if you want to watch the sequence. But yeah, so there's his wife, and she is laying on his chest with the tattoos. Interestingly enough, he has this tattoo right here on his chest that says "I've done it." And it's when he's having this like vision of like the ways that things could be or the ways that things that are, and I think he's envisioning this tattoo. But she's on his chest with the tattoos. And so I believe what it pans up to is this blank stare that's on his face. I believe you're what you're seeing is actually how he left San Francisco. There is another clip I want to show you, but let me talk about this just a second more. That he started the mystery of her death before she was even dead. And she was led to believe, like he led Sammy to believe that it was all psychological and that he could stop at any time. But he conditioned himself to have this thought process that he was going to solve this mystery of her murder. Um, Look at this here too, because you'll see this at the end of the sequence. When he's talking about Sammy Jenkins, he's giving us the reveal. He says this, which I think is very revealing. Okay, so I paused right there in the video itself and here too, because you see the transition that just happened there. He knows, he's aware, that the story that he's telling is not. about Sammy Jenkins. The story that he's telling is about himself. So I believe that he did. I believe he got this injury. He was laying there looking at his wife, and he keeps telling the story. That's the moment she died. And he can't deal with that loss of her wifeness to him, the period of her wifeness to him. And so, because of that, he began this murder mystery, and trying to solve the murder mystery of her being alive.
He must
Uh, anyway,
be a freak.
so there are those two bits of information in this film that I wanted to make sure that we talked about. I think that it's important to I think it's important to talk about for this movie. I think that there's a lot of times that this movie gets hit on its surface for how good it is, and there's a whole other layer. There's a whole other layer I think that it's missed entirely. Um, so, uh, damn. Okay, we're almost out of time. I have a couple more clips I want to show you, and these are really just about how great how great of a storyteller Nolan is. One of the things I love about him is how he can tell a story without dialogue. He will just visually show you what's happening, and it it just doesn't. He doesn't have to talk too much about it. Sometimes, in some cases, he won't even use music. Um, in the same way. So let's take a look real quick. These ones are based off of dialogue. It's also Guy Pearce's performance, but just these thoughts that Christopher Nolan shares with us in his first film. She just asked him if he could remember his wife for her. Um, and then he starts to like rattle off these little details about blah blah blah, and she's like, "No, don't just rattle off the details. Just truly remember." Yeah, yeah. See, that's what I'm talking about. Um, it it was that monologue that really I knew that I wanted to be an actor, right? I knew that I enjoyed writing, um, but the way that it's just such it's so sparse, right? It's true, right? It's these little moments, these little pictures, and that's what makes up what we think about people. That's what makes up all these little things is how we get the feeling of a person. 100%, that's true. And then the way that he does it is he intercuts. An immature director would would focus on Guy Pearce's face to let him have that model. There's a really immature director that would do just an over the shoulder and leave it at that, right? Um, but instead, he does this look that's real close, real tight, and then as he's telling it, it cuts, and it cuts to all these little bits and moments of his where his brain is flashing, the story that he's seeing in his mind. And this is one of the things I love about Nolan is, and then that he does so great. He did it in Oppenheimer. His most recent film he did in The Prestige. I love it. He does so great is the way that he plays with time, in the way that in the mental sphere. Now he does it again physically, in Interstellar, and he does it in other ways too. But that specifically, how film can be used to talk about um, e- eternity, right? In between the frames. Yeah, so that's one of my odes to him. I want to share this other clip too because I think about this clip a lot. And this one here is the one that for me, like, um, well, let me just, we have a few minutes, right? Uh, for me, it's about how, okay, so we're gonna deal with that. How do I grieve if I can't sense time monologue? Let me just play it for you real quick, and we'll get the thoughts for afterwards. Right, right. Um, at the heart of that movie seems like a noir, maybe an interesting concept, psychological problem. But at the heart of that movie, it's about how do we deal with grief. Um, and I don't know. I don't know if you guys have dealt with grief. If you haven't yet, you're going to. Just wait. The only way to not deal with grief, I think, is to not know anyone or or have any loved creatures around. Um, or feel anything at all, because ultimately that's what we get. I'm not trying to be morose. I'm just saying. That's what we get, is that grief is part of the package. Um, and so he's for him to talk about grief is the same as to talk about love, right? It's a universal feeling, and that we're all gonna have to deal with. He's talking about it in this very specific way. Now, there's this memory problem, and when I first started watching the movie, I think it hit me because there's a girl that I was involved with. I definitely thought we were destined to be together, and that we were going to get married, and all of this, and we just broken up. And I was destitute, you know, as you are when you're 16 and 17. And so this idea that how do I grieve, right? How am I supposed to grieve? And one of the things for me is I don't feel like I do sense time in a usual way, because generally it feels like when I leave an event, like that whole event is swallowed up into that. And if I don't think about that time and that place, I don't actually feel it or process it at all. Because as far as I'm concerned, it's not even real. Odd. It might be everyone operates this way. Like when you move out of the present, wherever the present is, that it just doesn't feel like it was a thing, right? Um, so I don't know. Maybe that is normal. Um, but yeah, so that's hard to process. So, but the more that I have seen that, how do we deal with these events if we don't? And then further, like I think he's hitting on something that is in most substance abuse too, is that when you get caught in a place, from whatever the feeling of that substance, it feels like an alternate world. You don't have to deal with the things that were bothering you. You can forget about them for a time. But how can you heal, right? How can you heal if you don't feel time? Um, Poignant, right? In a movie about a man with a memory problem, and the mystery of solving his ex-wife's murder. Uh, I do love it, and I stand by that interpretation. I believe that is Nolan's interpretation, on that his wife was still alive and that he overdosed his wife, because he conditioned himself to believe that she was already dead. 100%. I believe that is the interpretation. Just the same way that I believe that the interpretation of Inception is that he inceptioned himself to wake up in an alternate dream, into another dream where he can see his children's face and live with his children, because they're probably long gone. He's probably been in a dream for a long time. He's probably one of those people who is in the underground place, sleeping their lives away. They come in every day. I would bet that he has that deal set up in Inception, which is not one of the movies that we reviewed tonight. Um, but we are in the wrap up part of the show where we sort of talk about generally about Nolan. I hope that you guys have enjoyed this portion of it. It just passed so quickly to me. So I had a great time. These are, in my opinion, the best Nolan films that you could possibly watch. So talking about them is an absolute joy. I would highly recommend them if you're looking for, Nolan at his best. Memento, Following, The Prestige, and Oppenheimer. Those I would suggest them in that order. I feel that you would get an understanding. If you want to go the more accessible route, like you want to go through a movie style that you would recognize more, I would go the other way. Yeah, Oppenheimer first. Because then you'd be like, okay, cool, this non-narrative storytelling makes sense in the way that it is, and then it just gets more extreme as you get into it. But the heart of the movies is always about people. The following is about a person who is lonely and wants to just get out and meet some people. Memento is about the loss of a loved one, and how people can cope with that. Prestige is about the same thing, and also showmanship, and what is obsession, what it takes obsession that takes to make like a very fine performance. What is that? And then Oppenheimer, same thing. Like, what is an obsession that takes you? What happens if an obsession takes you too far? Like, what if you start working on something and don't think about the consequences? Um, Really, because that's the case with all the people and all their storylines. So thank you so much for joining me tonight here on the Cox and Space Behind the Scenes podcast, and working on this has been Flicking the Skip, working on the animatics and talking about the Christopher Nolan films. I'm not quite sure where we're gonna go next with this series, so stay tuned for what's happening next week. It might be a one-off, I'm thinking, but I'm not quite sure which one-off we're going to be taking a look at. Possibly Coneheads. In fact, it might be Coneheads. Um, but yeah, it's yeah. If you like what we're doing, comment below, subscribe, turn on the notifications bell. If you don't, leave us an angry message about why you don't like us, and that's fine too. If you want to check out more of what we're doing, check out coxinspace.com, coxinspace.com, and you can check out all the stuff we've got going on up there. Get connected with our Discord, our Facebook, and our Patreon. If you want to check me out personally, you can go to my Instagram, which is wigwags.us. That's also my website. So wigwags.us. You can get an idea of what is happening behind the scenes of these projects, what motivates them. Hint, hint, it's always a story calculator. So you can find out more about that in some of our Secret Sunday episodes. We might have one of those coming up soon. Guys, thank you so much for listening so far into this podcast, and we will catch you on the next one. Bye.